Was 2021 a good year? Let's talk about it. Hello everybody, I'm Ian with Board Feelings, and today we're going to do kind of like a mini board game gab, but this one is a part of my 2021 recap mini-series that I'm doing here, leading up to my top 25 games of all time. And in this episode, I guess this video, we're going to be talking about episodes. I have episodes now. Wait for next series, guys. So in this video, we're going to be talking about people who say, this year just wasn't a good year, or last year was better, or the year before that was better, or, 2018, that was the best year for board games. So, let's, what do they mean by that? Well, a lot of times when we play games, sometimes games just don't stick with a certain person, and some people like a certain game over another game, or maybe their favorite game of all time isn't a few years ago, and maybe they play a lot of games, and just none of them really stick, and so they give this perception, they hold this perception that this year just must suck, must not be good for everybody, right? So I did a thing. So I looked at games from 2000 to 2021. I took games that had at least 2,000 votes on the game, because I felt if a game has at least 2,000 votes, enough people threw in their opinion whether this game is good or not. So I think it gave a good spread of games that people played, but also games that people had opinions on. And then I took that data and I graphed it. And now, for you, I present the graph. Actually, before I do that, let's talk about some of the data points. I have 1,415 individual games. They are categorized by year. There are a lot of different games on here. A lot of them are, the top 1,000 games of all time. And then after that, it kind of drops off and it gets a little more spread out. Because again, I needed games within that year period, within 2000 to 2021, that had at least 2,000 votes. So that limited this search a little bit. So this is not a comprehensive list, but it was the best list I could do at the time, given the data I had. But I still think it gives a good look at what happened. So let's take a look at this data. This first graph that you're seeing right now shows, again, all the games and their average rating. So Board Game Geek has two ratings. They have an average rating, and then they have a geek rating. Now, to be completely honest, how they calculate both of those is a little nebulous, and they don't quite define it, but I'm going to assume that the average rating is a straight average of all of the ratings for that game. Just, total number of, add all the numbers up and divide them by the number that exists. That's the average. I'm going to say that's how it works. And then the geek rating is weighted in some kind of way that we don't really know, but we may talk about that a little bit later. So, okay, back to the graph. So this is the average rating. So as you can see, it starts out in 2000 at all the games of my list that release in 2000 had an average rating of 6.97. You see then it drops off a little bit until you reach about, what year is that? That is 2006. Well, it gets to 7.0. That's an increase. And then it dips off again, and then once you hit about, what year is that? 2014, you see increases year over year until you reach 2020 and 2021, where currently they are both sitting at a 7.88 average. Now, what does that mean? That means that trending games are getting better, or at least people are reviewing games better as time goes on. As the games are newer, people are reviewing games more favorably. That's what that means. So now let's go to the Geek Average, because let's go and talk about that a little bit. So this is the graph now where I am showing the Geek Average. And as you can see, it's a little different. The biggest difference that you can see is that 2020 does drop a little bit. It basically is in line with 2019 levels. Now, why do I think that is? I think the Geek Average, what they do is they give more weight to games that have a lot of reviews, like thousands upon thousands upon thousands of reviews to it. Where if a game only has a few thousand reviews, they don't give as much weight to that rating. But as it gets more views, they weight it more heavily. So that's why you see, the current year, 2021, has a lower number, because I believe what they did is many people haven't played those games yet, so they're saying, okay, this number isn't as strong yet because a lot of people haven't played the game yet, so they tick it down a little bit. They weight those games less. But as you can see, regardless of that drop-off in 2021, the very slight drop-off in 2021, you still have this positive trend. I bet that if I run this again in a year, which I probably will do, I will see that 2021 numbers in this geek rating will be higher than 2020, just because of people eventually finally playing the games that they haven't gotten to play this year. So yeah, that's what's happening. People are rating games higher as time goes on. Newer games are being rated higher. Now, let's talk about a few problems with this. The biggest one I can come up with, the biggest problem I can see, is when I rate a new game that I play, I often give it a more favorable review than where it settles in eventually. So, I personally go in and I rate my games a few times a year. I'll go in and evaluate just generally, and they might drop half a point or, up or down, as I play games, as I play more or less games. But also, as I get tired of a game, as I play a game a lot and I start playing it less, I may think a little less favorably about that game, and so I will rate it less. That's another thing that's probably happening. People probably rate games very highly when they're new, when they first play a game, or the first few times, because they're excited to play more of it. And then as time goes on, when they cool off on a game, they change the rating to a little lower, which means older games are naturally going to decrease their rating, which is one thing that I imagine the geek rating has accounted for in some way, by maybe bumping up older games just naturally, just give them a little bit of a boost if they have a lot of reviews, even if those reviews may be a little lower. So that's why I think the geek rating does hold some interesting value when looking at it. So yeah, was 2021 a good year? I think 2021 was a great year. If you saw my top 10 games of the year, you'll see why. I loved all of those games. I could have talked about easily 10 more games, and I still would have feel those are great as well. So I think 2021 was a fantastic year, and I think this data at least gives some evidence to support that it was a good year for the majority of people. And not only that, 2020 was a good year as well. And not only that, every year, games are continually getting better. Anyways, that's my little analysis. I know this video is a little bit longer, but I thought it was kind of interesting to show what I found. I want to increase the data in this list. It takes a little bit of time to compile Board Game Geek data just because they make it so easy to do. It's very difficult to get BGG data. And so I am going to maybe work on compiling more of this and actually talking about, and maybe over time, we'll see how this list changes year over year, and we'll talk about it more as I get more data. So I thought it was interesting. I thought that maybe you thought it would be interesting too. So hope you liked it. Anyways, what did you think of 2021? Did you think it was a good year, a bad year? Do you think you've had better years in board gaming? Leave your thoughts and feelings in the comments below, and I'll go experience many board feelings.